Well, I think it's hit 11 o'clock, so we will start our session. So I just want to say thank you all very much for joining us today. This is the first event that we have done in partnership, Sign Solutions and Recite Me. So I'm really excited to have you all here and try to make this session as engaging as possible. And we're here to kind of give you an insight and some different speakers who have been working with our organisations on how they have increased their digital inclusion. I'll just go to my first slide. So just a couple of bits of housekeeping. So if everyone can make sure that everyone has been muted to avoid any background noise. Enable live captioning, please click on the live transcript at the bottom of the Zoom screen, then click show subtitle. Questions to be asked via the Q&A, so we have a chat function at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And we will discuss all the questions at the end of the session. If you've got any technical problems, you have any trouble hearing, please just drop us a message in the chat. In the chat section, we've got my colleague Laura from Recite Me, who will be monitoring the chat throughout the session, and we'll do our best to help you. The webinar is being recorded and it will be uploaded to YouTube channel and emailed across to those that have signed up. And we also have 2 interpreters, British Sign Language interpreters today. So if you do need to pin the interpreters, please do. There should be 3 dots next to Carleen and Simon's video, which you can pin to make the interpreters big on the screen for you. So, housekeeping out of the way, I'd like to introduce our guest speakers who will all get more deeper insight into what they do and the organisations that they work for. But we're joined today by Dipti Amin, who is Corporate Website and Digital Content Design Manager at Barnet Council. Jabanda-Wilson, who is Accessibility and Inclusive Design Lead at Virgin Media O2, and then Steve Donovan, who is the Vulnerability Lead of OVO Energy. So just to kind of talk to you a little bit about the partnership that Sign Solutions and Recite Me collaborated together at the middle of last year. Sign Solutions' aim is to break down the barriers of communication for deaf people and to combat inequality. And it made perfect sense for us to partner with Recite Me, as Recite Me shares our vision in accessibility for all and the mission in creating a more inclusive society for everyone. We offer clients a complete solution to accessibility, and we want to ensure that nobody with a disability faces a barrier in accessing services. So Sign Solutions and Recite Me's partnership is kind of a joint inclusion and supporting organisations in becoming accessible for a variety of different disabilities. So I'm just going to touch upon Sign Solutions services. So it'd probably help if I introduce who I am. So I am Sophie and I am the Sales and Marketing Manager at Sign Solutions. And Sign Solutions are a non-spoken communication support specialist. So we provide services to the deaf community. You can see on the screen here, there's a list of all the services that Sign Solutions offers. We provide all forms of non-spoken communication support, can provide face-to-face interpreters in any setting. We have a video interpreting service, Interpreters Live, which some of the panellists that are joining us today are going to be talking about implementing and how it works for their organisation. We offer deaf awareness training, British Sign Language translation. So if you're wanting to put what's called an envision, so if you've got a video that you want to have sign language in front of, it's something that we can also do. Same for text into signed content. We also support in organisations in being accessible for deaf employees, and then also supporting deaf employees through the Access to Work process. So we are kind of what I like to describe us as a one-stop shop for all deaf services. That brings me nicely to hand over to Sammy from Recite Me, who's just going to give us a little bit of an insight as to all the amazing services that Recite Me offer. My next screen.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you so much. So my name is Sammy Hobson. I am the Partnerships Manager at Recite Me. And the partnership with Sign Solutions has been positive so far. And we are working hand in hand to remove the digital barriers for website visitors or platform users on the web-based solutions And I think today we're having quite a few clients of ours joining, and so as the clients of the Science Solutions, for example, the Stevens Oval Energy and Barnet Council. These are the lovely panelists joining us today. They are our clients. Thank you so much. And so yeah, just to briefly what ReciteMe does and how we trying to remove the barriers for the people with visual impairments or neurodiversities or all these all kind of situational disabilities or any conditions. People may need some assistance when accessing the web information. So ReciteMe website accessibility software provides every online user with the tools they need to customize a site in a way that works best for them, like the slide says. So how do we do that? So, some website visitors may find what's known as a clean line design, so the white background with maybe black text. It looks quite, clean line website. It's just like simple, but some people find it difficult to navigate because it could be overpowering. Color contrast is not quite right for them to digest the information. So ReciteMe provides tools so that website visitors can customize. It could be the color contrast, maybe font, text size, magnifying glass. It could be, people who just need a little bit of a larger text, like I'm getting to that age. And even the languages to help them navigate through the site in a way, suited to their needs. So yeah, I just don't want to go too much details, but yeah, without further ado, because today is having an amazing panelist. So we have Dipti to start off with. So let's start off to hear from our joint ReciteMe and Science Solutions client, Dipti from Barnet Council, who's going to share a bit about their digital inclusion journey. So I'm going to hand this over to Dipti.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. It's really great to be here with you all. So I'm Dipti. I'm the website and content design manager at the London Borough of Barnet, and I'll be sharing with you what we've been doing as a digital team to enable digital inclusion and working to open up access to our digital information and services. Next slide, please. So, equality of access for all, how are we closing the digital divide? Now, Tim Berners-Lee, inventor of the World Wide Web, tweeted during the 2012 London Olympic Games, "This is for everyone." He was talking about one web for everyone. And I'm starting with this because I think this is what has been communicated here is why we're all here today, to break down digital barriers and open up access for all. While many people are connected to the internet, have barrier-free access to online information and services, have hardware and software to do it, there are many people who face barriers and are digitally excluded. Issues including age, disability, skills, money, and confidence play into digital exclusion. It is a multifaceted issue and it needs a holistic organisation-wide approach to really tackle it. But my focus and responsibility for Barnet Council is our digital estates of websites and primarily barnet.gov.uk and how we make them accessible to as many of our residents as possible. Next slide, please. So our journey. What have we been doing? We've always been aware that our users don't have a choice to access our information and services when they have to come to our website to do something, such as pay council tax, apply for a blue badge, book waste collections. So to support a usable and accessible experience on our website, we've used best practice for accessible content writing and web design. But this work was turbocharged for us in 2018 when it became a legal duty for public sector organisations to make our digital products and services accessible. So to do this work, we must meet a framework of standards known as WCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and we are assessed each year by Government Digital Services on our compliance. And we've been working on improving the way our content types are written, laid out, formatted, how we make videos, how we use imagery and make social media more accessible. And we've been working on functionality and code as well to make sure alternative ways of navigation on the website, such as using tab keys, can be done easily. Assistive text, such as screen readers, can work on the website. But, you know, we've also continued to ask ourselves, what are we missing? Who are we missing? You know, is there any more that we can do? How can we be more proactive about our digital inclusion work? So to help us, we engaged with our staff disability network. We talked about digital barriers. We considered relevant data and insight available to us, looked at what other organisations were doing and what other tools are out there. And that's how we connected with Recite Me and Sign Solutions. Next slide, please. So we went live with our video interpreting tool, Interpreters Live, which is powered by Sign Solutions in September. The service allows people who use British Sign Language to contact our services digitally through a British Sign Language video interpreter at any time, place, and using any device that they want to of their preference. Access is also available in person from our reception area. We've been so I'm going to say the picture on the screen, which shows our live user testing of the service at the Jewish Deaf Association in Barnet. Residents in attendance, we had residents in attendance, and Sophie and Adam from Sign Solutions also came down for the day to join us and support us. We had 20 British Sign Language users in attendance to learn about the service and ask questions. The session was also an opportunity for us to test how the service would be used and allow our contact centre staff actually the opportunity to practice taking calls via Interpreters Live. And as soon as we started testing, we knew right away that there was a need for the service. Our test scenarios weren't even considered. Our residents came with actual issues and tasks that they needed to resolve, and so we went with that. Engagement is a really big part of what we do, and having the usability session with our residents and the Jewish Deaf Association really helped us both make new relationships, new contacts, and from this work it's actually led to a new funded engagement project that we're now doing with our deaf residents to dig deeper into the barriers that they face when accessing services. Next slide, please. So our aim to have Recite Me on the website is to allow residents with accessibility needs to adapt and customise the website to meet their needs, and not to place the responsibility on them to have the software set up on their devices. You know, we want our website to be as adaptable as it can be. The Recite Me Accessibility Toolbar is helping people to customise their experience of our website, allowing them to choose how they interact and connect with services. We worked with Recite Me to get the implementation just right for our website, and so far the most popular functionality is the text-to-speech tool that we have on there, followed by translation with Mandarin and Filipino as the most used languages. So that insight was really interesting for us. And then also changes to styling, which are mainly about font size. And then the most used tools after that are the reading aids, being mainly the dictionary tool, the screen masking tool, and text mode. And also we are really promoting the tool internally to other services so they can use the features with their service users directly in their day-to-day work. Next slide, please. So what are we doing about digital inclusion across the organisation? How do we join up with other services working on tackling digital exclusion? We have a joined up wider programme of activity that includes identifying digitally excluded residents and to then target interventions through digital triage, improving digital skills and confidence through digital champions within frontline services, ensuring council services are accessible to all, including residents that have a clear view of the support that's on offer to them. And so, as I said at the top, it's a holistic organisational wide way of tackling digital exclusion rather, and hopefully you'll see, you know, what we're doing. So if we just go over to the next slide. Okay, and this is just me saying thanks very much for your time and listening. It's been an absolute pleasure to be invited here and to share our learning with you. And I think at the end we're taking questions. So really great to be here and do this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dipti, for that. It's been an utter pleasure for Sign Solutions and Recite Me to have supported you in your digital inclusion journey, and also kind of something that made me think as you were speaking there about how proactive you are as a council in implementing these kinds of services. It's not, and actually valuing lived experience. So the day that we did with the deaf community before we set up the Interpreters Live service was really great for us to get feedback and to make sure that the service was right for the local deaf community. So thank you very much for your insight, and really appreciate having you. And as this Dipti says, if any questions, if you want to save them for the end, you can put them to Dipti then. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Sat from Virgin Media O2, who implemented the Interpreters Live service back in 2014. And Sat's going to talk to us about that journey. So over to you, Sat.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming along. So yeah, today I just wanted to introduce you a little bit to what I do. So currently my role is Accessibility Inclusive Design Lead. So my work kind of covers a lot of things across the business, but essentially it's kind of improving customer experiences, products and services so that they can become more barrier-free for our disabled and vulnerable customers. Today I'm going to talk to you about how we've gone through that journey with Sign Solutions, implementing Interpreters Live service for our BSL customers, and also talk a little bit around how we've kind of signposted customers via our online content to that service as well. I must say my role back in 2014 was very different. Well, not very different. It was different. It was more kind of focusing on the disabled, vulnerable customer services and how actually we didn't do so well in supporting customers in the right way. So it was very much around the how do we get back on track and how do we kind of focus that lens around disability inclusion rather than disability exclusion. So hopefully the journey as I go through it next will give you a bit more insight in terms of my role. Thanks, Sophie. So yeah, the journey, which was all about implementing or improving access. Sorry, my slide looks a little bit different to, there's lots more bullets there. And sorry, the alignment is a bit off. So apologies if you're seeing it in a weird way on the screen, but hopefully it will make sense to you. So from 2014, which was probably when I was not so involved in the relationship between Sign Solutions and when we were Virgin Media, I was probably working on other things at the time, but that service was there offered to our customers, and it was embedded within our UK and offshore contact centres. So not something we did in other service areas at that time. However, in 2017, this is where I got heavily involved in the service and also kind of making sure our customers were able to contact us through our video relay service. That's what we called it. We still continue to call it that. So Virgin Media at the time had an internal audit carried out by an external kind of disability expert. It did highlight a lot of things, but in particular to this topic, it was around maintaining a relationship between us and our accessibility service providers. So Video Relay, Sign Solutions were very much one of those providers that we wanted to stay close with. So we began a 3-year disability action plan. So I kind of managed all the customer problems. Removing those barriers for disabled and vulnerable customers was very much high on my agenda. By 2018, we did discover actually with that relationship forming between myself and Sign Solutions, who offer the Interpreters Live service, was that our contact centre staff needed regularly reminding about how to handle those calls coming in from the BSL interpreters, and also kind of how could we prevent longer term issues by including training or content into training, supporting how deaf customers either contact us and how those calls needed to be handled. So that was kind of prominent then, but also continued throughout our journey there on in, because if you think about contact centres that are large and complex, that are UK based and offshore based, there's thousands of people and they do come and go quite a lot too. So we have to think about how do we maintain that information as up to date as possible, reminding people how to handle those calls. By 2019, it was very apparent that I'd kind of built a relationship anyway with Sign Solutions, and Kim Dodds was my, I want to say, partner relationship manager. That's probably not her title, but that's we formed a relationship, and actually we wanted to make sure that, well, I wanted to make sure that Sign Solutions and the Interpreters Live service had contact into us where there was customer problems and complaints, and to reduce them to zero. Essentially, we didn't want to have customers go through a poor experience. So we did forge a really good relationship and process where any referrals will get sent to me. I would then put it out to the right people to resolve immediately. So I think we did have some really good wins there. We did also in 2019, from memory, I'm hoping it is around that time, but we did talk about expanding Interpreters Live into other service areas, and we talked about retail, for instance. There's a lot of value using the service in retail. For us, it wasn't the right time, I must admit. We had additional things happening within our organization. We didn't get it out in our retail space, but would definitely be suited for organizations that do have a big retail presence. And then moving out of the 3-year Disability Action Plan programme, which is when my role as Accessibility Inclusive Design lead came about, it was more kind of implementing a framework where I could kind of take a lot of the services like Video Relay out to other areas of the business and say, this is how we support these customers. This is how then you need to design our products and services so that they are usable and accessible for these customers too. So although I probably had less of a role with Sign Solutions from that point and going forward into today, there's very much, I do have a lot of kind of involvement in making sure that other areas of the business understand that Video Relay service is very important to a group of our customers, and we mustn't forget that when you're designing products and services is really important. And even kind of signposting customers to how they contact us. I think we still had a bit of a mentality within some groups where we would say in our communications, call us, when actually it should be contact us, because we're then kind of bringing inclusive language into the fold. So that was kind of where we then looked at a new call routing process. And again, it was also about improving customer experience for BSL customers. So going back to all the calls were routed to any agent across any UK site and offshore site, we actually thought that it would be better. And this is where Sign Solutions were very involved in kind of helping us, or I guess driving us to think about that. Let's keep it a little bit focused, have a smaller group of agents that manage these and take these calls. And that was actually the best approach we could have taken. So we developed a free phone number for the advisors, for the BSL advisors to use when they're contacting us. It's not something that we put out to our customers. It's more of a between Sign Solutions and Virgin Media operational kind of call routing process. So it's not something that we say that everybody can use this free phone number, if that makes sense. And then today, 2023, we maintain, well, we've got Virgin Media and O2 now as one business, and we both have our legacy kind of organizations have different BSL service providers, but actually we wanted to make sure that where we've got customers taking our cable Virgin Media services and our O2 mobile services, that they followed the same sort of process. Again, making it easier for Interpreters Live service and the interpreters there to kind of contact the respective teams. So let's just move on, Sophie, if that's okay. The next kind of part just to talk about is around how we maintain our online content. So we signpost customers, and I think that's always been a, you know, from our start of our relationship, how we signpost customers to our video relay services on our website. Changes to that service is always initiated by Sign Solutions, and that ultimately makes sense. We don't do that when our content or kind of UI changes. We just make sure that the content is kind of signposted in the right way. So when there are changes to Sign Solutions and Interpreters Live, their end, we make sure, well, they tell us, which is great. They actually give us some really good kind of instructions of what to write. So it really helps us determine how quickly we can get that content live to make the change, but also how we can pick and choose some of the content, because what we are given doesn't always have to be what we put on our website. And we've had discussions around that, and it does make sense for us to have, because of the way our pages are laid out and how content is created and designed, using what parts of, or most of, or some of that content that we're given from Sign Solutions. It's a flexible thing, which is fantastic, because once we've had that agreement on the final copy, it then goes through from me to our digital content team, who upload the content, which is really quick as well. And actually that period of change and uploading and presenting that change online is pretty quick. And I've just got on the second half of this page is an extract of what we currently say to our customers around our video relay contact option, and also how that we signpost to the Interpreters Live service content page if customers want to set it up for the first time, or they're having trouble on any type of device. Next slide, please, Sophie. And here's just a little appendix just to kind of show you what our customer journey looks like. So we've got from the left to the right, we have the customer contacts the Interpreters Live service. The call gets connected to Virgin Media because they tell them who they want to speak to, and whether it's a Virgin Media cable customer or mobile customer or both, they can go through to they're taken through by the interpreter to one of the free phone numbers. And then you have the three-way dialogue between the customer, the interpreter, and our agent. So it's really pretty straightforward, and I think the routing has helped massively in terms of less time waiting, and also much better service, because you're kind of targeting a smaller group of agents when they're answering those calls, and they're probably better trained to do that as well. So really that's it for my presentation. So hopefully it's given everybody a bit of a taster in terms of how the service might be set up in your organization, and how you might want to kind of take that forward with Sign Solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sat. That was very insightful to hear and learn about the Virgin Media O2 journey. And yeah, I spotted there's a question, but I will leave it for till the end for Sophie to pick up. So for now, last but not least, it's time to hear from Stephen from OVO Energy, who is going to share a bit about the journey OVO Energy has been on to create an inclusive workplace. So I'll hand this over to you, Stephen.
Hi, I'm Steve. I am the vulnerability lead at OVO, and on a day-to-day basis, I'm really focused on how do we make sure that we leave no one behind on this journey to net zero that we're on as an energy supplier. However, today I'm going to talk a little bit more about one of my other roles at OVO. And at OVO, we've got something called our belonging networks. We've got 8 of them in total, And alongside the amazing Leanne Clark, I am very fortunate to lead on one that's our access network, about how do we make sure as an organization we are powering a fully accessible OVO? How do we make sure that the people that come to OVO to work can make sure that they access everything that we have in a day-to-day life, regardless of any accessibility needs that they've got? And if we could just jump very quickly onto the next slide. Cool, amazing. And I was asked to talk a little bit about how have we built this culture of an inclusive and kind of diverse workplace. And everything is really underpinned by these 4 words on the screen at the moment. So we've got valued, respected, supported, and happy. And these things are so important because we know that we can only succeed in our mission of creating this diverse and inclusive culture if our team is truly diverse and everyone that's here feels that they are valued and respected. And we know that we work best when we feel that these things on the screen, that we feel that we're supported. That's how we can make sure that on a day-to-day basis, we bring the best version of ourselves to work. And we know that if we think about this, not just for our people, but for our customers, that when we're doing these things and we're all doing the best work that we can, this is how we make sure that we meet the needs of our customers as well. If we could pop on to the next slide then, please, Sophie. Amazing, thank you. Oh, we've got a bit of formatting, but that's okay. I was asked to share a little bit around what we've learned along the way when we kind of try and create this inclusive and accessible organization. And something that's really, really stuck with me from the start whenever I've been involved in accessible journeys or inclusive services for customers or for people is that this isn't a tick box exercise. And what I mean by that is this photo that we've got on the screen, which I came across years ago, which is of a shop window that has a sign in it saying wheelchair ramp available at the counter, just ask. And I think that just fundamentally shows where organizations can take a tick box approach to accessibility and inclusion. And it just doesn't work. It's quite simply where we haven't thought about the needs of the people that we're trying to serve. And we just try and do something to tick a box and say, yes, we're access friendly. And it limits our way of thinking. So for a start, the fact that it says wheelchair ramp available, I think we can all agree that there's probably days that we'd all prefer to take a ramp than steps. You may be quite sporty and you might have broke a leg at the weekend, unfortunately in a football or a rugby match. And I think, yeah, a ramp, if you're in a wheelchair for a temporary period of time, or crutches, could be more appealing than taking the steps. You might be someone that has mobility challenges, someone that's pregnant, someone on a skateboard, all these different types of things. We tend to focus so much on the why people need accessibility and inclusion support rather than what they need, which is the more important bit. And getting the what bit right is where we really can make a difference. So it's how do we make sure that we just don't make assumptions? And the key to all of this is how do we involve the people or our own customers when we're designing things to work for them? So this is something that's been super important to us, and this is where our networks come in. So that the access network that I mentioned at the start on the very first slide, we've got a group of about 30 of us where we come together on a monthly basis, and it's a real diverse group of people where we've got people like myself that are just, I don't have any conditions that prescribe me to have any accessibility needs on face value. I benefit from a lot of accessibility tools because of the way that I learn and absorb information. And then we've got some of our website design teams who are very passionate about creating accessible websites. And something that's always been described to me from those teams over the years is that actually when it comes to writing sites to things like really good kind of WCAG standards, is that quite simply, it's a way of showing that you're good at doing the work that you do. If we create products, if we create sites that work for all of our customers, typically what it means is that it's a more user-friendly experience in general. So regardless of whether you've got accessibility needs, actually it typically improves the customer experience as a whole. So that way of thinking has been super useful. The other types of people that we get coming into the network, though, are people with living experience. And this has been so useful for them to talk to us about, not just kind of explaining problem statements for us to work on and improve and areas for us to kind of work together on, but involving them in the solution. And this is something that can be quite challenging when we look at these things from a customer perspective. So with my other hat on, with my vulnerable customer hat on, it's so challenging sometimes to reach out to vulnerable customer groups, especially with the wonderful world of GDPR. And how do we kind of do that in the right way, making sure that we're not kind of going into the marketing world. But having a network of our people internally that can say, right, this isn't working for me on the training environment or accessing our sites physically when we come into the offices, using any of the facilities that we have on the sites, all those kind of things, not just telling us what's wrong, but helping us to fix and solution and improve it has been so valuable, having those insights. And it's then how can we use that kind of two-way? Because typically what we'll find is things that work well for our people will probably work well for our customers as well. And things and lessons that we'll learn from customer experience can then be brought back into our people experiences too. And a great example of this, I guess, is when we looked at kind of the changes that we all saw across the nation when we all moved to kind of a bit more remote working with things like COVID. Talk about how often we speak to our teams in a call center. We went from doing those conversations face to face to remotely, and briefs maybe not happening face to face. And then how do we get communications on our internal intranet pages? And that's where the Recite Me tool was so cool for us to be able to introduce that and make sure that the messages that we put out there work for all of our people, whether you're someone that needs to enlarge the text, someone that wants to have things read aloud to you. The way that we can just customize it has been so powerful for us. And we get in the region of about 50 to 60 people using that uniquely every single month, which is amazing because that's 50 to 60 people that would potentially be missing out on some super important information that we're trying to get out to the whole of our business. So being able to do that has been really cool. And again, it's then what we're trying to do next around how do we take that and then use it for the benefit of our customers too. If we could just pop on to the next slide then, please, Sophie. Amazing. Thank you so much. So there's a happy little chap on the right hand side of the screen that I think underpins how I feel about the work that we're doing over at the moment. So it's an elderly chap on a bike rolling down a hill, and without being too kind of cliche, it does feel like we're on this really exciting journey at the moment. One of the fundamental changes that we've made over the last couple of months is by bringing our customer experience and our people teams together, and that's been a purposeful decision that we've made as an organization. And I guess I'm a prime example of why that can work. Everything that I do in my day job, looking at inclusive services for customers, I also do as part of the Access Network that I lead with Leanne. So it's how do we do that on a grander scale now with bringing together those two teams? And that's been really cool and really exciting to align and share best practice internally. And then we can make sure that the things that we're doing well, we do well internally and externally as well, which is amazing. Some of the things that we're quite passionate about as well is that we're on our journey to becoming a disability confident employer. So we started that towards the tail end of last year at level 1, fairly confident by the end of this year we'll be at least at level 2 with a little bit of extra push. We'll probably get to the level 3 standard as well, which is super exciting because it's how do we make sure that we don't just attract diverse talent, but we retain those as well that are with us, which if any of you've seen it, Scope quite recently published a paper on organizations and firms and their abilities to retain talent with disabilities and long-term health conditions. So we know it's important that we get that part right. The Recite Me tool that we put onto the kitchen table, our intranet pages last year, we're in the process of doing a relaunch of our careers website, which will involve including the Recite Me tool there. So again, from the start, we make sure that our journeys are a bit more inclusive as well. And then finally, the last thing I really wanted to touch on is as we all go kind of forward from today's session, and I think this is a prime example of it really, is that we will test, we will learn, but I think what's most important is that we share these things too. And sessions like today and just hearing about some of the other firms have been working in this space, that even though what we do day to day is very different, I think when it comes to inclusion, accessibility, and particularly digital inclusion as well, it's great to hear all those different similarities. So I'm always an advocate that if we can learn from someone else's mistakes, that's amazing because we get the benefit without the pain. So sessions like today, I'm always going to be grateful and really appreciative of these being set up. And hopefully that's been useful as to share some insight as to how we've approached things. But again, it's just, like I said, it's just that kind of, we're still on that journey. We're by no means finished, and always welcome any feedback on any of the work that we're doing at the moment. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Steve. It's a real pleasure to have you. And I think something that's kind of rung true is the value of lived experience and listening to your customers, listening to your colleagues, because they're what kind of implements the change within a workforce, and then also the services that you put out. I'm going to ask you, I'll start with you first, Steve, just because we've come to the end of the panel slots now. What would be your takeaway from today's session? So what might you look to want to implement within OVO from kind of hearing the other speakers today?
I guess it's not something new, but doing more of what we've done already in the past. So I loved hearing about how Barnet Council have had sessions in the community, understanding and getting to know people face to face, and allowing them to talk to them about challenges that they're facing, and how have they made sure that their website works better for them. I think things like that are what's essential. I remember probably about 6 or 7 years ago now, going over to Reading with our website teams and running a session all around testing some of our core customer journeys with a range of different people with diverse kind of accessibility needs, from people that were maybe autistic, or we had a chap that was blind, through to people with dexterity challenges. And it was just understanding the importance of the way that we build that site to meet all of those people's needs. But connecting people is where it really works, though. It's that understanding and meeting people face to face can be quite powerful, particularly when you've got design teams that maybe spend a lot of their time looking at things like code, but actually getting them to meet the people is really, really cool for them to understand, not just actually what they do from a website design perspective, but on a day-to-day scale of things, getting from a train station into an office to come and meet us and all those things. It's really cool. And I think that's the stuff that really sticks with people, actually, is how do you bring all of these things to life, and some of those face-to-face events like that can be super cool.
Amazing. Just for the benefit of this, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, just so that everyone's able to see the panelists. So if you could, Sammy, if you're able to just let me know that you can see everybody on
Yes,
the screen.
I can.
Yeah, perfect. Just nice to see you all in the big screen. I'll come to you next. That just what would be your takeaway for our audience as part of this webinar?
Yeah, so mine will probably be related to kind of the implementation of Interpreters Live into your business. It's going to be a great benefit to some customers, not all customers, but you still have to think about the provision of those some customers, so BSL customers in particular. So it's a valuable service, and I think I feel that from the point where myself and Sign Solutions kind of link together to like benefit from the closeness and kind of understanding how customers use that service, and how, if there are problems, there's a mechanism in place to kind of resolve them really quickly, rather than going through a very long-winded process. So I think it's definitely key to establishing kind of business owners between the two organisations, so that you can resolve issues really quickly. It gives those customers a bit more kind of confidence that, we're thinking about them as much as we are thinking about non-deaf customers, non-disabled customers as well.
Definitely, I completely agree. And Dipti?
Hiya. Yeah, I think the takeaway that I'd share is engagement, and just get out there and talk to and engage with as many of the users that are relevant to the products that you're putting in, or even not necessarily relevant, but just to everybody. So in the example of Sign Solutions, internally we knew that it would be a really great service to have on the website, but we really wanted to engage with the community that would be using the product to make sure that it worked for them, make sure that if there were any changes that we were co-designing with them. And so I would say, yes, just because it's there doesn't mean people will come. You also need to make sure that you get out there and you tell people that it's there. And one of the things that we're building on right now is communicating that internally to the rest of the organisation, so that services can use those tools in their day-to-day jobs with their service users as well. So yeah, engagement, 100%.
Brings me nicely on to, we've got some time now for some questions, which I've had a look in the chat, and we've had quite a few. The one that I hope you don't mind me wanting to ask the question first. In terms of the accessibility and inclusion journey that you're all doing within your organisations, how are you communicating what you are doing to colleagues? Because I think that's kind of the the biggest challenge is that when you implement a service, like for example, like Interpreters Live or Recite Me, how are you making it known to your team that these services are available? How do you do that, and how might other organisations look to inform their colleagues of the service? I'll open the floor to either of them. So, Steve, you've taken yourself off mute, so you can go first.
I'm happy to jump in. Yeah, that's cool. There's probably two different ways that I can approach this. So I'll start with people first. So I suppose the access network that I lead with Leanne, the cool thing is that for each of the networks that we have, and I saw there was something in the Q&A about the other networks, because I only talked about one, but there's 8 of them. I've popped a link to a full web page where you can find out a bit more about belonging in the other networks as well, because there's lots that we do kind of across the networks collaborating, which is cool too. But each of the networks has a sponsor at a senior level within the organization. So ours is really cool that we've got actually the COO is our sponsor, so Joe Gordon, which is amazing. So that instantly means that we can kind of cascade messages from the top down whilst we do it from the bottom up as well. But on the same time, we've got kind of parts of the kitchen table, that intranet page that I mentioned earlier, where people can go and just explore it in their own time, because time is pretty precious. We're all pretty busy in our day-to-day lives, so I get that. And then there's the monthly meetings that we have as well, where we can kind of bring people together to kind of work through some of these things. But we always make it quite clear to people that you can just come and listen as well. Just come in and listen, and you can learn so much from that side of things. For customers though, the flip side of it, we do quite a lot when it comes to training, particularly around some of our specialist teams. But we've got something internally as well that we call our vulnerability toolkit, which is a one-stop shop of everything that people would have been taught in a training environment, but puts it in their hands so that they can use it day to day when speaking with customers. Because as we know, you can't remember everything that you got taught in training. So how do we bring that to life so people can use that day to day? And that's been really cool. We know there's like around 3,000 of our kind of customer facing team people use that every single day for us, ranging from all the different things that we do. So that's been really cool too.
I'll go next. So very similar to Stephen, actually, we have a very similar setup. We have 6 staff networks, and we tap into those staff networks and talk about the things that we're doing. And we also go along and talk at the different boards that we have across the organisation. So digital board, inclusivity board. We make sure we get time at the top table and take it to our senior leaders and tell them you know, the developments on the website, so they can, like Steve's just said, that gets cascaded down. Go into service specific meetings and talk about what we're doing and let people know that the tools and the functionalities there. So newsletters, just any kind of channel that there is, we try and exploit to get the message out. And then externally, you know, direct engagement with the relevant user groups that we engage with. We've got partner organisations, ask them to sort of, you know, promote that through their social media channels, through their newsletters. Yeah, just a general kind of holistic approach of getting the message out there, really.
I don't know if you wanted to add anything onto that.
Well, I think we kind of focus more on the operational type of communications. So making sure that our operational staff, right from an agent talking to a customer to a team manager and even the senior managers, that are aware of the alternative or accessible services that we offer our customers. I guess the other side of it is, or my role is kind of making sure that, and I think I touched on it in the presentation, where if I'm linking out to other business areas, so if we talk about brand marketing, if we talk about product go-to-market teams, and where other communications might be generated, it's about kind of taking the specific I guess language of calling us. I think that's where I've seen a lot of the communications that say customer is told to call us, when actually some might not prefer that language, and I would probably educate them and say contact us through this phone number, but also you can use some of our other relay services like text relay, video relay, for instance. So for me, it's all about kind of the inclusive language part of educating our people when they're designing and delivering kind of the outputs or the collateral that goes with a new product, for instance, or a new this or a new that, to our customers.
Amazing. Thank you all for your insights and what you're doing within your organisations. So I have a question that was asked quite at the beginning of the session about how you've engaged with the deaf community. So I'll put this to Dipti and Sat for the as they have our Interpreters Live service. So Dipti, I don't know if you wanted to comment on the engagement that we did last year with Barnet Council residents.
Yeah, sure. Am I off mute? Yeah, sorry. Sorry, I'm just getting my brain into gear, apologies. It was really important for us to sort of use our networks and to make sure that we were talking to the community that would be using these tools. And we're really lucky in Barnet that we have a really engaged, deaf and hard of hearing community. And we work really closely with an organisation called the Jewish Deaf Association. They call the Jewish Deaf Association because that's how they started out, but they help people from all communities. And so we talked to them and said, can we come down? Can we use one of your drop-in sessions where members of the community come in and then advisors help them with any issues that they have? Could we come, use your space? Could we talk to your members and tell them, what we're planning on doing and actually have some sessions with you? That's how we invited you and Adam down, because I felt that it was really important that our community were able to ask you directly, how the service worked. If they had any questions, you could engage with them directly as well. So I didn't want it to be a remote service. I wanted there to be sort of one-on-one human engagement. And that was really, really important. And building trust within our community is really key for us. And I felt that that was one of the ways to do it, was to have a dedicated session. The other thing that we did is that, we have adult outreach teams that work with our residents that have accessibility needs. And so I got in touch with our early adult outreach officer, who specifically works with our deaf and hard of hearing community, and said, could I get in touch with your contacts? Would it be okay for you to tell them what's happening? Would they be interested in sort of being part of a user group? Can we, join up? And so that was the other way that we built those relationships, by using sort of colleagues and their networks as well.
Brilliant.
I'm not sure if we did, to be honest. So might sound a bit vague, but it may have been before my time, because we've had the service working with us for many years now. So I'm pretty sure, well, I don't know the answer in terms of how we engage with our communities, our deaf communities, to kind of make sure that the service works for them. I think the only bit that we do get is the regular interaction from our customers. I guess that's the feedback that we get via some of our customers that use the service from Interpreters Live, and we get that fed back. But generally, we do tend to use that as a way to improve how we manage those calls and handle those calls. So that's always been part of every time I receive a complaint, for instance, that's a trigger to say, do we need to review that process? And often it is. If it's not working for one person, it may not work for others. So it's that open door to say, let's review the process. So that's what we tend to do off the back of customers kind of going through that service themselves.
Yeah, I think it's about implementing the right service and then communicating that amongst colleagues and then across the customer base, and then how you then promote the fact that you are accessible and the services are available. So thank you so much for both of your insight. And then I've got one more question here, which are there any stats that any of the speakers could share today around the positive impact their inclusive and accessible activities have had? So any statistics that you can share with the audience?
I actually had a slide full of stats, and then I thought nobody would be interested, so I ditched it. And I don't have the slide to my thing, so I don't have it to hand, but I'd be really happy to share those slides with whoever wants to see them. But what I can tell you is that we have had a month-on-month increase for both the tools. So it's been a real success. I think off the top of my head, we have had, since we went live with Sign Solutions, 60 calls so far, and we had a year's contract with Sign Solutions, and we nearly used up all our minutes way before the contract was finished. So I've had to renew again early. So I hope that communicates how well that's going. And with Recite Me, when I last looked at the stats, I think we were actually hitting above the industry average for engagement with the tool. And what's been really great about the Recite Me tool is the insight that has given us about the languages. So I said in my presentation about how Mandarin and Filipino are two most used languages on the site. That's not something that I would have been aware of in terms of our digital users. So that's good insight that can feed into other things.
I've got a quick one I could share on the kind of people and culture side of things. So we use Peakon surveys on a regular basis to understand how our people are feeling about working it over, what's going well and what's not. So when we stood up our belonging plans back in kind of 2020, we were averaging about 7.5 on that scale. For Q1 of this year, that was up to 8.7, and we've seen kind of obviously growth kind of year on year over the last kind of three years as a result of some of the work that we're doing in that space, so that we know that that's delivering some tangible results for us. Anecdotally as well then, so we use a similar product called Sign Video for allowing our BSL customers to speak to us. We get in the region of about 50 to 100 calls per month through that channel at the moment, which is absolutely amazing. And we see significantly higher CSAT scores from customers that call through and use that service to speak to us in comparison to some of our other customer journeys.
Brilliant. And Sat, I don't know if you've got any what that you want to share. What I'll do at the when this session is finished, and Dipti, if you want to share that slide with me, then I'm happy to add it to the other slides that we had.
Yeah, the only thing I could add around stats, probably not something I can share, but we have seen an increase in call volumes that have come through the service than we have had previously. So year on year, there's been a massive increase. And there have been times that we have used our minutes way above what we accounted for.
Brilliant. Well, we only have 2 minutes left, so we've kept quite nicely to time. So I just wanted to say thank you to the three of you, and thank you to our audience for joining. I hope you found it beneficial and useful to hear some insight from our speakers. If you've got any questions, Sammy, I don't know if you wanted to add anything from the Recite Me side, but otherwise, I'd just like to say thank you again for coming, and thank you to the three of you for giving your insight. It's really key into how we can create a more inclusive society and digital space for everybody. So your insight it's invaluable. So thank you very much for being a part of today.
Yeah, like we said there, Sophie, thank you so much for wrapping that up. Yeah, I just added the comment to the chat. So there was a question about the statistics, so I just pop it there. So please reach out to find out more. But yeah, it's been really, really insightful session. Thank you very much for all the panelists for joining us today.
Recite Me, believing in accessibility for all.